Hey there, everyone. It's Maureen from God's Good Table. It's so good to be with you this afternoon.
Mom,
What?
I don't think it's good. Okay, I think you're good.
Okay, trying again. Hey, it is really wonderful to be with you today, this being our very first of a regular Wednesday afternoon live stream. We really want to bring you great content and provide you with principles and information and a lot of food for thought so that we can help you help yourselves in your daily life. So every week, one thing that we're going to do is share a special product with you that we love and that we use. And this week, I want to talk about Pluck seasoning. This one happens to be one of the newest, which is not really a seasoning per se. It is actually desiccated organ meats from grass-fed animals in New Zealand. It's an easy way to add the nutrients from organ meats into your family's daily diet. You can sprinkle some on eggs, sprinkle some in stews and soups, and just use it in a multitude of ways. I use the original brand most often. The original Pluck seasoning in the orange packet is wonderful, and I put it on all kinds of things. But this is becoming one of my favorites because it is so easy to add to things like the stew that we're going to have for dinner tonight. It's going to get a little touch of Pluck organ meat. So something to check out. We do have links on our website, and we'll add a link below for that as well. Our goal, again, is to provide you with useful information and encouragement and maybe help spur you along in both your knowledge, but also your desire and ability to really live life to your fullest physical as well as spiritual potential. We believe that God gave us everything we need in Scripture to know not only how to worship Him and please Him, but how to be healthy and strong, even how to recover from illness. And so in the coming weeks and months, we're going to bring you great content. We're going to interview a lot of really neat people that have far more experience and knowledge than I have. We're going to talk about everything from today. We're going to start with basic dietary principles, but we'll move through deep dives into fats, being able to discern what's healthy for us, what's good for us, and what's not. We're going to want to deconstruct dietary dogma and go into what foods that our bodies needs, what nutrients meet our bodily needs. We're going to look at how to develop healthy brains and have healthy children and healthy families. We have people coming on like Mike Dixon, the Fit Farmer, Mandy Bloom from Real Food Recovery, Chelsea Blackford of the Christian Nutritionist, and many more. Oh, they're going to pop into my head. We have the next 3 months completely packed. So tune in every Wednesday afternoon, at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. You can send us questions and remarks, and we certainly love it if you do a super sticker or something like that to help support us as well. This work that we do takes a lot. It takes a lot out of us, and we really appreciate your support, and your encouragement, both, especially your encouragement with all of your comments and suggestions too. But it does also take money to keep things going. So if you want to do a super sticker or anything like that, we'd certainly appreciate it, but it's not required. And please also like our videos, subscribe to our channel, and please share with your friends. We really want this message, this encouraging message of hope and health and healing through timeless principles rooted in God's word. So please share far and wide. We just want to help. We just want to help people. So we're going to go ahead and get started today and talk about just really basic dietary principles. And then in the next 2 months, We're going to take each principle one by one and delve deeply into it. We'll have a lot of information and instruction, but also simple how-tos. We're going to do a pantry clean out and all kinds of neat stuff. So, getting started, I want to first talk about just the few basic principles. I'm up to 9 right now, and I'm really wanting to just keep focused. So let's not go crazy here. But the first principle is one that we will definitely go much deeper into. I think it's on next week's schedule with a pantry clean out. And that is to eliminate all processed foods. And you might wonder, well, what does that mean? What is a processed food? Well, a processed food today is just about everything that we're putting into our bodies, unfortunately. But I like to say when God created the earth, he created the night and day, the sun, moon, stars, the sky, the earth, the plants, the animals, and the people, everything in its proper order and place. But he did not create factories. Men created factories. Men created a lot of things that are good and a lot of things that are not so good. And factories for food are one of those things that are definitely not a good thing. So if it comes in a package with a label and lots of ingredients and all kinds of stuff that you have to read and figure out, what does it actually mean? What is this thing that I can't even pronounce? You probably should not be eating it. But if it's something like Pluck or milk from a local farm and it says just milk, or Pluck says, let's see if I put on my trusty rusty glasses. Beef organ blend, freeze-dried powdered liver, spleen, kidney, heart, and pancreas. We can understand what that means, and it did not come from a factory. Likewise, everything from fats and sugars and grain products, when they have a label with a long list of ingredients, including a bunch of things that sound like chemicals that came from a factory, it's not what you should be putting into your body. We want to replace processed factory-made foods with God-given foods. And really, that's the whole theme here, God-given foods. We had a 2.5-day conference this summer at Polyface Farm, and the theme of that was God-given food. During that immensely edifying event, we learned all about what foods we should be eating, just like we're talking about right now. So let's eliminate the processed foods, including things like breakfast cereal, macaroni and grain products. Not that you can't buy them, that they're not all bad. Okay, we'll get into that further in a moment. Eliminate sodas and sugary colored drinks and things like Gatorade and Kool-Aid. These things come from factories. They are not good for our bodies in the least. So we can have replacements that actually work really well for bodily health. But sodas and juice boxes and stuff like that don't belong in our diets. Refined grain products. And here is where cereals and things like macaroni noodles come into play. We should be consuming clean whole grains, not processed, not made into something different, but something as close as possible to the way God made them. So, I buy organic brown rice pasta at Trader Joe's. That's the main pasta that we use for just about anything pasta related in our home. That's fine. But I'm not buying Kraft macaroni and cheese, the stuff I grew up on that I thought I loved. Well, I did when I was a kid. And now I think, yuck. Now you might not think yuck right now, but when you transition from the factory made version to a homemade whole version, you'll begin to appreciate not only the difference in nutrients and health benefits, but flavor, taste as well. So we're going to move away from those refined grain products Convenience foods. Of course, I don't think I need to even say you shouldn't be eating Twinkies and Ding Dongs and Doritos and all of those kinds of things that are conventional factory products. We need to replace those convenience foods with better options that you can make in your own kitchen. And, sometimes we can buy a few things too. They're still whole and unprocessed. We want to eliminate refined sugars, including corn syrup and high fructose corn syrup. These things are driving the diabetes epidemic that we have in the United States and worldwide. So let's eliminate these, as well as artificial sweeteners, which have another problem in and of themselves. For instance, aspartame. NutraSweet is the brand name, I think. It's actually a neurotoxin. Whenever you create a fake food in a factory to replace a whole food that should be good for us, that replacement is not going to be good for us. But it's okay to have small amounts, moderate amounts of natural sugars, things like panela, coconut sugar, maple syrup, local raw honey. These are all fine in small amounts. Sugar is, after all, supposed to be a dessert, not an everyday condiment or ingredient in everything that we eat. So small amounts. And if we can learn to look at fruit as a dessert the way it was intended. I don't even think we should be giving our kids fruit throughout the day. Let it be a snack once in a while, but even whole fruit, it's way better than fruit juice or those fruit leathery snacks that are concentrated fruit sugar. But fruit should be a dessert, not an everyday food or throughout the day. One of the biggest problems that I see in American diets and modern diets generally is that natural, wholesome fats have been replaced with artificial factory-made things like margarine and seed oils, which are extremely destructive to the human body. The seed oils, including corn, vegetables, soy, oh man, that's just about as bad as it gets. Even canola. These are not traditional fats. They're not God-given foods. They're man-made fats that come from a factory. They're not close to nature. They are not good for our bodies, even though supposedly they are. We have all of these heart healthy things that are not actually healthy, but actually destructive. So again, we need to move away from things that come from a factory and go back to consuming foods that are as close to the way God intended as possible. So these fats will include butter, ghee. That's a really wonderful traditional fat, especially in Asian countries, and it's very useful for healing purposes. So ghee, it comes from butter, but it's minus the milk solids. So if you are a person who has a proclivity towards digestive issues, or you have maybe a lactose problem, ghee is a very, very excellent option to butter. It contains many nutrients, and we love Simply Ghee from our friends at Simply Ghee. They produce an excellent product. Coconut oil is one of the most used oils in the world, and yes, it's a saturated fat. Saturated fats are good for us, just like the butter. Coconut oil is a very versatile oil. Palm oil as well. We're looking, again, for sustainably raised, however, not factory farmed products. So the coconut oil, the ghee, the butter, olive oil. And olive oil, when we delve deeply into fats, we're going to talk about how to know whether or not your olive oil is truly just olive oil or if it's been adulterated. How do we choose olive oil? What's the difference between extra virgin or pomace, for instance? But true whole olive oil that has not been processed is an excellent, excellent fat. It has a lot of monounsaturated fatty acids, which are good for our body, and a lot of just wonderful components, polyphenols and such that our bodies need. And it's far better than the vegetable oil. And then lard, unless you have a religious reason, a conviction to avoid pork. Lard is a traditional fat that is actually super good for us. It's shelf stable. It is stable at high temperatures, and it is very, very rich in vitamin D. Tallow from beef and sheep, schmaltz from chicken fat. All of these are traditional fats coming from primarily animals, with the exceptions of olive oil, coconut oil, and palm oil that come from plants. But we want them all to be clean and sustainably produced rather than coming from factory farms or a lot of processing. So again, we'll delve more deeply into that another day. People are afraid of eating salt. We've been told for years that salt causes heart attacks, high blood pressure, edema. Well, salt doesn't actually do those things when it is not purified. Purified sodium raises blood pressure, causes edema, can cause or contribute to heart attacks. But that's purified sodium, which is what table salt is. However, our bodies actually have a very high requirement for daily salt intake, but it needs to be in the unrefined form. For instance, Redmond's Real Salt is a product that I use in my kitchen every single day. Celtic sea salt is another favorite. And to a lesser degree, Himalayan pink salt. I've used that a lot. I'm just not sure whether or not all of it is what it says it is. So I'm not saying it's not, but it may not be. What I know and trust are real salt and Celtic sea salt. Our bodies have to have that. Every cell in our body requires salt, but that's sodium plus all of the associated minerals attached. Real salt has something like 70 or 72 associated minerals. Celtic sea salt, even more than that. When everything is when the total package is together and you don't deconstruct it, all of the components work synergistically for our body's best interest. But when you deconstruct it, purified sodium closes up the cell walls so that it inhibits osmosis, which means that there is not the free flow of nutrients in, waste product out. That's why we have edema, high blood pressure, and all of the problems associated with salt intake. So please do not be afraid of salt, but look for the real thing. And again, on our resource page and in our links here, we will put links in the comments for real salt and other products that are actually good for us rather than harmful. Dairy products have become problematic in the last 50 years in particular, even less. And this is because, again, we have abandoned natural dairy practices. For instance, and the biggest thing from the get-go is that we've taken dairy cows and dairy animals like goats and sheep and everything else, water buffalo, there are lots of animals producing dairy, but what we are accustomed to in most parts of the world are goat and bovine dairy. And they should be wonderful for our bodies, but because we've been putting so many chemicals into our bodies and we've been consuming fake foods and pseudo foods, many of us can no longer handle what should be good for us. But we need to go back to whole unprocessed dairy from animals that are naturally grazing, animals that are foraging for their own food, or in the winter months are eating a whole food package of fermented hay and silage rather than cottonseed meal, which is common in the dairy industry, and it's never been a food until the last probably 30 years, I'm guessing. Or genetically modified, heavily sprayed soybean meal, genetically modified, heavily sprayed corn. Those corn, sure, in tiny amounts, grains are okay for most animals in small amounts if they're clean. But today's animals are literally being produced on factory farms. I grew up in America's dairyland, where there were family farms everywhere. And many of my co-students and friends at school growing up grew up on dairy farms. And the cows, like those raised by my uncles, were out on pasture. This is really annoying me. The sunlight's coming in at a weird angle. So excuse that glare on my face in particular. But I remember running barefoot through the grass in the pastures on my uncle's farm. And the cattle were always grazing, and they would reach across the fence line in the summer and nibble at the corn, which would later go into corn silage mixed with hay, fermented, and that would feed the animals in the winter when they couldn't forage for themselves. But dairy animals should be foraging. Goats graze, browse, sheep graze, cows graze, water buffalo graze. I know there are a lot of animals, and we can have fun with that later. But dairy animals should be eating a natural diet in an open air, clean environment, not packed 5,000 into a barn. And man, that's what Wisconsin is now, and Ohio and other states, instead of the family farms, which have gone out of business because they can't begin to compete because they're getting paid such low prices for fluid milk. It's now 3, 4, 5,000 head dairy operations. And it makes no sense to me. I'm sorry, but why do you want to work that hard? Why not just manage good pasture, let the cattle harvest their own feed, fertilize the fields, aerate the fields, sequester carbon in the fields, and then you don't have to harvest the food, store the food, feed the food, clean up the refuse, and have massive toxic yuck that stinks and makes people sick. Anyway, enough of that. So we should be consuming dairy products that are produced from naturally grazing animals. And then instead of ultra pasteurization, which kills the dairy products, we should be consuming most of our dairy products unpasteurized. You can go to realmilk.com or westonaprice.org and look up a chapter near you to find sources for real unprocessed raw milk. Raw milk cheeses, raw milk kefir, and yogurt. In some cases, when we really just can't either acquire those products or make yogurt for ourselves, there are some acceptable options. I buy Trimona yogurt here on the East Coast. It's a 24-hour fermented yogurt made from the milk of dairy cows grazing on properly managed green grass pastures. So there are options, but vat pasteurization, low temperature pasteurization is far preferable to the ultra pasteurized dairy products. So if you really can't get raw, which digests itself, by the way, it contains all of the enzymes that digest. This light is really bothering me. Raw milk contains lactoferrins that are protective proteins that help to keep the microbes in check. It contains lactase, which digests the lactose that so many people are sensitive to, lactose being milk sugar. It contains protease, which digests the protein in fat in the milk. And it contains lipase, which digests the fat that naturally occurs in milk. So when you leave all of the enzymes and all of the nutrients intact, you come up with a product that is much easier, and it digests itself and is actually beneficial for you instead of harmful. So dairy products, we do have a podcast on that as well with my friend Edwin Shank. You can check that out on our website. We should be eating animal foods. And excuse me, the dog is scratching at the door. I'm just going to stop the scratching. Okay, no more annoying scratching. Bruno's here. All right. People were designed to consume animal foods. I know that vegetarians and especially vegans don't like to hear that, but every part of our digestive system shows that we're supposed to be consuming animal products, from our teeth and our saliva, through our stomach and the digestive juices, the pancreas, all the way through the intestines that have receptors, for instance, for iron that comes from red meat. We have a digestive system that is designed to break down animal foods, not fibers from plant foods. And God has shown us throughout his word, beginning with Noah and his family leaving the ark, that we indeed should be eating animal foods. After all, what's the Passover feast? It's lamb. Abram and Sarah fed their 3 heavenly visitors curds and whey and the fatted calf and butter. We're supposed to be eating animal foods, and we simply cannot get all of the nutrients that our body needs from plants. We can't do it. We don't have the digestive system of a ruminant animal. We are not a cow or a goat. Our digestive system is much more like a pig, actually, or a cat or a dog, and they're omnivores. We are too. We need to go back to eating animal foods and not be afraid of them. But these animal foods need to be clean from either wild or sustainably raised farms. So pasture-based farms. We'll talk about that in another episode. We need to replace our refined grain products, and I alluded to this earlier, with organic, clean, fermented, sprouted, soaked products like sourdough bread, or I do another variety that's fully fermented, and I use a different starter. Sprouted grains that have been soaked, like rice that's soaked overnight with a little bit of whey, but not the refined and heavily toxic conventional grain products that is prevalent today all over the world, but especially in the States and throughout England, not all of Europe, but definitely England and the US. My family does not eat cereal for breakfast. We have eggs, omelets, soaked oatmeal, sometimes rice or quinoa, but not cereal. And we do far better. We're satiated and we're getting all of the nutrients that our body needs to start the day. Whereas with cereal, you're hungry an hour later. So whole grain products that have been properly prepared, soaked, sprouted, or fermented. We need to include, and this is the last general principle here, but we do really need plenty of clean vegetables and some fruits. I have a garden and I grow things on my deck, on my porch, and in window boxes. You can too. But in view of that, most people can. I know not everyone can, but organic, clean, fresh vegetables. And some of our vegetables and or fruits should be consumed fermented. I have a class on our website about fermenting foods. Fermented foods help us to digest our fats and our proteins. So there's no putrefaction going on when we eat a steak or a burger, for instance, because when you consume some sauerkraut with your burger, it helps to digest the burger, but it needs to be fermented and unpasteurized. Fermented foods are also good for your microbiome. They help clean out the gut and keep the microbes in check. So it's a multifaceted benefit program in one small package. And the fermented foods are super easy to make, but they're also readily available in most stores in most places now. For instance, Bubby's sauerkraut is pretty widely available. I can often find kimchi in the cold case of the produce section at a grocery store. Most of us really can just make them. They're very easy to make. I make all of my own condiments, and they're very healthful and good because I'm using good fats, clean vegetables, real salt, and all of the right things. And it's not super time consuming and difficult. So I want to guide you week by week through each of these principles and provide you with information, with instruction, and the encouragement to do the very best that you can do for yourselves and your families. And I'm just going to do this and get that sunlight. I'm in a very bright room, as you can tell. So this week, I hope you can take away just some key points, some key things to be working on. But we're going to go into a pantry clean out next week, so I can show you. Okay, this looks good, but is it really? What can we replace our mayonnaise with, for instance? What are some better options? What are some better options for breakfast foods? All of the things that you're probably eating or have grown up eating, we want to provide you with the information that you need to make better choices. And with that, two things remain to be said. One, again, is that we are all about God-given foods. I'm not ever going to tell you that you should be eating something that God didn't instruct us and guide us and encourage us to eat. If He created it for us, it's got to be good for us. So we're going to start there. The other thing is, if you think that eating healthy is expensive, the upfront cost can be more expensive than clipping coupons and buying conventional cheap foods. But in the long run, if you're sick, if you're tired, if you're unhealthy, if you're dying, if you can't go to work, if you are unproductive or less productive because your body feels like junk, stop putting the junk into it, because there really is a very high cost to cheap food, isn't there? And the highest cost is often just premature death. Look around you. Maybe you are one of these people who is sick, unhealthy, and just dying, literally, and desperate to be well. We want to help you in that path to wellness again, using God-given principles. And while we're at it, these foods are the best tasting. Everything that God created is wonderful. So it's not just that it's good for our body and in the long run good for the budget, but it also tastes good. There's a great deal of enjoyment in real, whole, clean foods. So with that is it for today. I would love to have some questions next week. And if I can find my glasses, I'm just going to check and make sure I'm not missing any. Okay, I think we're good. Definitely feel free to comment. And again, I would encourage you to like and subscribe and share. So thank you very much. And we'll see you guys next week, 3:00, or whenever you have